Okay, so now I want to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is lists, email lists. If you've been watching any of my stuff, and obviously you have been watching my stuff, you know, it's like almost every single video I'm talking about the list this, the list that. And I suppose the reason I love lists so much is because somehow I stumbled onto the idea of building an email list way early in my career. Actually, before my career started, actually before I even had a website, I started building a list. And that has made all the difference. It's allowed me to sell tens of millions of dollars of my products and help my students and clients sell hundreds of millions of their products. I mean, it's been, there's two main things that all my success goes back to. And one is that I've always focused on building a list. The other one is I've always focused on only selling stuff that people want. And the main way that I find out what they want is by asking them via my list. So it all goes back to the list. You just have to, you know, if someone comes to your website, there's only one thing we can say for sure. And that is that they will absolutely leave your website sooner or later. They aren't going to leave that browser window open for the rest of their lives. They will leave your website. And once they leave your website, they will have forgotten about your website. It's very hard. I mean, people are so busy and they go bounce to so many different sites. They'll just forget about you and your site, no matter how cool it is. And if you think about the way you are online, how many times have you been to a really cool site and then for some reason you closed your browser window, you got distracted or whatever, and then you're like, wow, there's that really cool site, but I can't actually remember the name or how I got there or what it was, but you know, I just sort of vaguely remember what it was about. And then maybe you'll go search Google, but you'll find 1,000 other sites and you won't actually get back there. Well, the way you get around all that is once you capture someone's email address and they subscribe to you, then you can send them emails and drive them back to your site and drive them back to your offer. So lists are absolutely king. Now, one of the most important things with lists is that bigger is not always better. And because of my position in the industry, I get to see the inside of many, many launches. There's lots of launches I help people out with. I've got my platinum group, so I get to see what's happening with their launches. And then when I do my launches, I get to see how other partners, how their lists perform, because they're sending me traffic, so I can see all the stats on their traffic and how their people convert. So I get to see inside all these lists, and I see this over and over, how smaller lists can way outperform larger lists. And this isn't a new phenomenon. There's this old theory, and it's been proven over and over. It's called RFM. And this goes back, this is old direct marketing wisdom. And it stands for recency, frequency, monetary. So recency is how recently someone took action. They bought, how recently they joined your list, how recently they bought from you. Frequency is how frequently they have bought from you, and monetary is at what ticket price, at what transaction size how much money have they spent with you. Well, in direct mail, these are used, this is like gospel. Well, for us, recency is all about, that's generally in this RFM model, recency is more about how recently someone has bought from you. And that's incredibly important, in fact, ultra important. But something we often see with email lists is how recently someone has subscribed to you. If someone has recently joined your list, they're a lot more powerful. And that's why in the next video, I'm going to start talking about launch lists. That's why launch lists are so powerful. The deal is if you have a fresh launch list, it's almost like this warm security blanket that you can just wrap around you. And a launch list is a list that you have built during a launch. And this is something, I've seen empirically over and over, because in my market, this market of teaching people how to build an online business, there's lots and lots of launches. And there's lots of JV launches that are driven by affiliates and joint venture partners. And if we just think about it like on the bigger picture, let's just say here's launch A by Guru A, okay? And here's launch B by Guru B. And here's launch C by Guru C. And here's launch D by Guru D. Now, a lot of times, all these gurus will be supporting each other. They'll be mailing for each other. They'll be affiliates for each other. And what we'll see is, this Guru A, in their launch, they'll put out these, their little sideways sales letter. There's their 3 videos. And during their sales letter, those will lead to this nice big launch list. They'll just, all these other partners will be mailing into their pre-launch content, mailing into their pre-launch content, mailing into their pre-launch content, and that will, into their squeeze page, and that will drive this launch list for them. Well, and then the same thing will go here. This person will have, these 3 pieces of pre-launch content, and that'll lead into a launch list for them, and so on. So, so in the end, each one of them ends up with a launch list, okay? Launch list. Okay, so let's just say this is January, in February, in March, in April. 4 months in a row, APR, April. 4 months in a row, 4 different people go into the market with a launch. They each do the sideways sales letter. They've each studied product launch formula. They each end up with a launch list. So one of the things that happens in these big JV launches is each one of them will have all these affiliates promoting for each other. And there will actually be what they call a leaderboard. And that leaderboard is where they'll publish who are the top affiliates, okay? And there's often a big competition to see who the top affiliate is. Well, the way this works is, say we had this schedule here. And now let's just say, we've already done this launch right here, where now we're on to B is doing their launch. And everyone is supporting B's launch. A is mailing into their sideways sales letter, and C is mailing into their sideways sales letter, and D is mailing into their sideways sales letter. And there'll be a competition between 30 or 40 different affiliates or joint venture partners, including A, B, or A, C, and D, and they're all supporting launch for B. Well, guess who's going to win this contest? Who's going to win that joint venture contest? It's going to be A right here, because A has the fresh launch list. It's only a month old. They've got that recent list. Now, it's not every single time. I'm talking about most of the time. Okay, so now let's flash forward into March. It's now March, and now this person, now C, is doing their launch. Okay, so C's doing a launch, and now we've got A mailing into their sideways sales letter, and B mailing into their sideways sales letter, and D mailing into their sideways sales letter. Well, guess who's going to win the contest, the JV contest, the affiliate contest for launch C? It's going to probably be B, because he's got the fresh launch list. It's only a month old. And it will go on, and it'll be the same thing. We get to D, and it will likely be won by C. That's just the way it goes. And the only reason I'm pointing this out to you, I'll get into joint venture launches in a later module. The only reason I'm pointing this out to you is that it's such a striking example of this idea of recency. When you have a brand new launch list, it's really, really powerful. So that's what these videos are about. It's all about talking about launch lists and your launch list and what's going to mean for you and how to manage that.